This isn't just about happy, healthy children. This is about the society.
What would you do if someone within your own family was quietly undermining your child? What if that someone held one of the most powerful positions in the British monarchy? This is the untold story of how Princess Catherine drew a line in the sand that changed the royal family forever. Behind the perfectly orchestrated public appearances and radiant smiles lies a story that has never been fully told. A story of a mother's fierce protection, generational clash, and the moment when keeping the peace became less important than keeping a promise. This is the story of Catherine's silent war. Spring 2024. To the outside world, the British royal family appeared united as ever. Queen Camilla, now firmly established in her role, seemed to have found her place within the Windsor dynasty. Princess Catherine, the future queen, continued to charm the public with her grace and dedication. But beneath the surface of perfectly choreographed public appearances, tensions were quietly building. And at the center of it all was an 8-year-old girl who had no idea she was about to become the catalyst for a family crisis. Princess Charlotte, confident, articulate, and naturally charismatic, had inherited her mother's poise and her great-grandmother's sharp wit. But these very qualities that made her shine in public were about to make her a target in private. The first warning signs appeared during what should have been a routine family gathering at Windsor Castle. Catherine, ever the observant mother, noticed something troubling about her daughter's behavior. It was during a charity luncheon honoring one of Queen Camilla's patronages when Catherine first realized something was deeply wrong. Charlotte, usually bubbly and engaged, had become withdrawn, a shadow of her normal self. What Catherine discovered in that quiet Windsor hallway would haunt her for weeks. Her daughter, pale and emotionally bruised, whispered the words that would change everything. Granny Camilla said, "I was showing off. She told me not to speak unless I was spoken to." For Catherine, this wasn't just criticism, it was an attack on her child's natural spirit. Charlotte had simply answered a question during a children's guessing game, yet somehow this innocent act of intelligence had been labeled as showing off. But this was only the beginning. What Catherine would witness next would reveal a disturbing pattern that had been building for months. Armed with new awareness, Catherine began watching more carefully. What she discovered was a series of small but cutting remarks, each designed to diminish Charlotte's confidence. A comment about taking a second scone, "We don't want to appear greedy." A dismissal of Charlotte's request to play piano, "Let the grown-ups enjoy some peace." Each incident alone might have seemed minor, even innocent, but together they formed a clear pattern of behavior designed to silence and shrink a confident young girl. Catherine watched as her daughter learned to make herself smaller, to speak less, to dim her natural light. This wasn't about royal protocol or proper behavior, this was personal. And Catherine, who had spent years navigating the delicate politics of royal life, was about to discover that some battles are worth fighting, no matter the cost. That evening at Adelaide Cottage, as Catherine tucked Charlotte into bed, the truth finally emerged. "Granny Camilla doesn't like when I talk too much," her daughter confided with heartbreaking simplicity. In that moment, Catherine faced a choice that would define her role as both a mother and a future queen. She could continue to keep the peace, to smile through the tensions for the sake of royal unity, or she could do what every mother's instinct demanded, protect her child. When Catherine shared Charlotte's words with William that night, his reaction was immediate and clear. "This isn't something we let slide." The future king and queen had made their decision. The gloves were coming off. The confrontation that would change everything came during what was supposed to be a peaceful family dinner at Highgrove. As Charlotte entered the room to say goodnight to her grandfather, Queen Camilla's response was swift and cutting. "Are you sure you're not too tired to be here?" But this time, Catherine was ready. After years of diplomatic silence, after months of watching her daughter's spirit being slowly crushed, the future queen found her voice. No, she's not too sensitive. She's a child, and she deserves to be spoken to with kindness. With these words, Catherine drew a line that would reshape the royal family's internal dynamics forever. This wasn't just about Charlotte anymore. It was about what kind of family the Windsors would choose to be. Camilla's attempt to dismiss the confrontation, "You always take things so seriously," only strengthened Catherine's resolve. "Children remember how they're spoken to," she replied, her voice carrying the weight of absolute finality, "especially by those who are supposed to protect them." The annual summer gathering at Balmoral would become the testing ground for Catherine's new boundaries. The Scottish Highlands, with their sweeping landscapes and centuries of royal tradition, would witness a quiet revolution. Catherine arrived with a new strategy. She would not leave Charlotte alone with Camilla, not even for a moment. But despite her vigilance, one final confrontation was inevitable. When Catherine discovered Camilla once again correcting Charlotte in the sunroom, making pointed comments about speaking over others and suggesting that sometimes your mommy forgets that too, the future queen's response was swift and uncompromising. "She's growing up just fine," Catherine declared, her voice carrying years of suppressed frustration, "and she'll do so without being made to feel like a problem." The message was crystal clear. There would be no more chances, no more excuses, no more targeting of her daughter. The change was immediate and unmistakable. Palace staff noticed Camilla's new distance from the children. The cutting remarks stopped. The dismissive glances ended. Catherine had achieved what years of diplomatic patience could not: genuine respect for her daughter's right to simply be a child. Charlotte began to flourish again, her natural confidence slowly returning. She spoke up at meals, laughed freely, and most importantly, stopped trying to make herself invisible. The little girl who had learned to stay silent was learning to use her voice again. But perhaps the most significant change was in Catherine herself. The future queen had discovered that protecting her family was more important than preserving artificial harmony. She had found her power, not in titles or protocol, but in the fierce love of a mother who refused to let her child be diminished. What the public never saw were the subtle shifts in palace dynamics that followed Catherine's stand. Staff members, who had witnessed the tension firsthand, began to understand a new hierarchy of power, one where the future queen's authority as a mother superseded traditional deference. The scheduling conflicts that kept Charlotte away from certain events weren't coincidences. The careful seating arrangements at family dinners weren't random. Every decision was calculated to protect a little girl who had done nothing wrong except be herself. Royal biographers and palace insiders began to notice subtle changes in body language, in speaking patterns, in the very choreography of royal appearances. Those trained to read between the lines of royal behavior understood that something fundamental had shifted. The woman who had once been criticized for being too common had proven herself to be exactly what the royal family needed: a mother who would protect her children above all else, regardless of the consequences. Remarkably, this internal family crisis remained almost entirely hidden from public view. The carefully managed public appearances continued: smiling photos, coordinated outfits, the appearance of perfect unity. But those who knew what to look for could see the subtle changes. Social media began to buzz with speculation. Royal watchers noticed that Charlotte seemed more confident, more animated in recent appearances. They observed the careful positioning in family photos, the way Catherine now seemed to create subtle physical barriers between her daughter and certain family members. Body language experts pointed to Catherine's new protective posture, the way she positioned herself, the subtle but significant changes in family dynamics that were visible to trained eyes. The future queen had mastered the art of protection without confrontation, at least in public. But perhaps the most telling sign was Charlotte herself. Royal fans began to comment on the young princess's renewed sparkle, her confident speaking voice, the way she had stopped trying to fade into the background. The little girl was herself again, and the public loved what they saw. Today, Princess Charlotte continues to shine with the confidence and intelligence that nearly got snuffed out. She speaks with authority beyond her years, asks thoughtful questions, and displays the kind of natural leadership that suggests she truly understands her future role. Catherine's actions sent a message that reverberated through every level of the royal family. Children were not to be collateral damage in adult power struggles. The future queen had established that while she would maintain public dignity, she would never again sacrifice her children's well-being for the sake of appearances. The relationship between Catherine and Camilla remains professionally cordial but personally distant. They perform their royal duties side by side, smile for the cameras, and maintain the facade of family unity. But those close to the situation understand that trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. What Catherine achieved was more than just protection for Charlotte. She redefined what it means to be a royal mother in the modern age. She proved that love for one's children transcends protocol, that a mother's protective instinct is more powerful than centuries of tradition. As Catherine prepares for her future role as queen, she carries with her the knowledge that she has already passed her most important test. Not as a royal, not as a future monarch, but as a mother who refused to let her child be diminished. Princess Charlotte will grow up knowing that her voice matters, that her intelligence is valued, and that she never needs to make herself smaller to make others comfortable. She will carry with her the confidence that comes from knowing she is unconditionally protected and loved. In the end, Catherine's silent war was won not through public confrontation or media manipulation, but through the quiet strength of a mother's love. She taught us that sometimes the most important battles are fought not in the public eye, but in the everyday moments where we choose to protect what matters most. This is the legacy of Catherine's courage, a little girl who learned she could shine without fear, and a future queen who proved that the most important crown she wears is the one that makes her a mother first. What would you have done in Catherine's position? When does protecting family become more important than keeping the peace? The answer might reveal more about ourselves than we expect. For more stories about the real lives behind royal facades, subscribe and ring the notification bell. The truth is often more powerful than the fairy tale.